Is that loud?
Yeah.
Good. That's what I was going for. Thank you so much for the hot chocolate.
You're welcome. It's like a coffee chocolate.
Coffee
Mocha.
chocolate. Mm. Oh, that's really good. Ooh, thank you so much. I appreciate how you're always going out of your way to do things like that.
You're welcome.
I go out of my way in different ways, I feel like. But then I stress myself out so much, then I feel like I take step backwards when I shouldn't be taking steps backward. Step backwards, steps backward. Either one works, I think. But yeah, I think that it's just a process.
Yeah.
I'm evolving. I'm getting better. About a year ago, 2, 3 years, maybe like 2, 3 years ago, like maybe right before I met you, I don't know if I would have called myself someone that's evolving. I don't know if that's something that I almost saw it as cringy, kind of like talking about yourself in that way. But now these days, I see totally what those people were saying and like how people were using it, and I definitely feel like I'm evolving constantly, trying to be better.
That's good.
Yeah,
A lot of people need to do that. And they need to know they're capable of that. Yeah.
yeah,
I love that about people. Being able, having the ability and the knowledge that you can do that is so much more valuable than thinking, I am the way I am, and that's it.
yeah, yeah. I think thinking I am the way I am, I feel like I've thought that for too long. But then also part of me, since I was a little kid, I've been called an old soul, and that's just because I would always kind of think differently than some people about certain things. Not everything, obviously. I was a kid, but things like that where I how do you put this? Repeat what you just said. I'm blanking out so hard. It's my ADHD.
I'm blanking out too because I am.
Oh,
I too have ADHD.
oh man, this is what happens when you put two individuals with ADHD.
We're one. We're 75% a whole brain cell together right now.
But I had just talked about evolving. You mentioned a certain
Being,
thing.
I mentioned like evolving and knowing that you're capable of evolving instead of saying I am who I am and staying the same.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, because to that point, what I was trying to say is I was always seen as an old soul, and I think it was because I would always be fighting against staying the same in a way. Although, I mean, obviously, I followed my interests and I kind of stayed the same in certain ways. Um, like I always hated seeing like people that were like, "Oh, that's just this one person," that's just how they are. That's just who they are. It's like, okay, yeah, but we're all able to change. We all have the capacity to change. We all have the capacity to not be that way. I just never wanted to be a resentful old person. I never wanted to get stuck in like, oh, this is my total personality and that's who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I think from a young age, I always kind of knew that, and that's why people called me an old soul. So I can, I mean, I can relate. Just it took me a lot of dumb things happening in my life to really start being serious about my own personal growth. And honestly, you coming into my life was a huge part of that. So,
Thank you, babe.
got to give credit where credit's due.
Thank you. I think when I was a little kid, the idea of change always seemed good to me because I was always, growing up with ADHD undiagnosed. And in a Mexican household, there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of expectations. At least in my family, there was a lot of high expectations because, the idea was we came to this country, we sacrificed everything, and, you're like our representation of what we sacrificed for. So when you don't succeed in school, like that really makes you feel like you're just not even worth like being this purposeful being. And then so I feel like as a little kid, staying the same terrified me because I would always think and always have bad thoughts. And I would always have bad thoughts as a little kid, just constantly thinking like I'm gonna die. Um, Death is coming. Like the idea of death always like intrigued me, but because I dreamt about it so much. And I would dream about my family dying, people dying around me, and like knowing that I felt like that was just a part of me. I thought that was just ingrained in me. It's like you are defaulted to die and think about death and your family's death all the time.
Oh,
So
wow.
as a little kid, it terrified me to stay that way because I'm like, I don't want to think this. I'm a little kid. This isn't.
And when you say stayed that way, you don't mean like, oh, I purposefully kept myself thinking those things. It's just I just thought those things. Those
Yeah.
things were like just what came into my mind at that time in your life.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I wanted to remove that from myself because I'm like, if I can take this part away from me where I can feel like I'm a person and like I can think maybe normally like everyone else and not have those like sad thoughts and evil thoughts in my head or those thoughts that make me just like think about things ending, that things never lasting and things never being good for me because I was, yelled at school, I was yelled at home. And so, things like sleep, because I would have those nightmares, I would be terrified of going to sleep at night too. And so,
Mm, I bet.
as a little kid, change always felt like something like, oh, it's going to get better. And it's going to get better. But as a little kid, you don't know that there's more to change than just thinking like things will be better. It's like work you have to do internally. And as a little kid, you're not aware of the fact that your environment, you're a product of your environment, partially. If your parents are, not actively giving you the attention you need, or maybe they're getting frustrated, and my parents would get frustrated with me and like bless them for having the patience because I was a stressful child. Um,
I think a lot of us, right, looking back,
yeah,
yeah, feel the same way.
yeah. And so looking back at that, I'm like, I would look at how my mom would treat me, or she would treat people like in a way that was kind of like she was just giving them directions. People wouldn't question what she said, or and like us as little kids, we weren't supposed to question that. And so it weirded me out. Like, what if my mom didn't have that authority? What if my mom just wasn't that aggressive or angry to us? Like, she is capable of that, but she hasn't. And so as a little kid, it would trip me out. It's like people are capable of change, but people should want to. People should know that they're capable of it. But the idea that my mom and maybe family members around me, like, they're like, that's just the way I am. It's like,
Well,
ye-
it feeds into the same mindset. You know,
exactly.
it's like one person will be like, oh no, you don't want to do this. That's just this is the way things are because of that person or whatever.
Yeah.
It always kind of it's a group mentality
Yeah.
becomes one.
Yeah. And for me, change now is like when I think I need to change for the better. I need to change, like, the two foundations that I found are necessary for someone to kind of be able to analyze and see who they are and what's going on around them is saying like I should want good for myself and I should want good for others as well. Anything that doesn't include that is either like part of the fun that you can selfishly have or it's something that it should not be included with people and their decisions and their well-being. And so I see a lot of that not being practiced, especially as a little kid. I would see adults being aggressive with children. I would see adults yelling at kids. It's like, we're new to this world and you're making us feel like crap already. You're already telling us how we're going to be treated now as adults. Why would we want to be that?
Yeah, why would we expect different
Yeah.
too? Like some people, why would they have hope for better if their environment from like such a young age was as bad as it was, you know?
Yeah. And it's like, how can you expect someone to succeed given the variables they've grown up with? How do you expect them to be successful in relationships? And
Yeah, relationships is a big one too. It's funny because we have a lot of conversations about this, but sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off either, but it just it makes me like see how many negative just like toxic behaviors we have, not just in our relationships with like our partners, but just relationships that we have in each with each other. um Honestly, I feel like I get a lot of crap for saying it around my straight uh men friends, like, but they a lot of people don't like admitting that we live in a misogynistic world. And even though it's not like so cut and dry that you're like, here exactly, here's the misogyny, which in some cases it really is. But like, even the mindsets that are instilled into us from such a young age are extremely misogynistic, ritualistic. And like, that's something where I'm constantly trying, now that I'm aware and now that I'm like in the know of like what's kind of been going on a little more as I grow older. Like, I definitely find it it's something I'm shedding, I'm deprogramming. And I would have never said that a couple years ago. I would have like kind of cringed at someone saying that, but I totally get it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that you've been traumatized by misogyny
Well,
being opened up.
yeah. I mean, without saying too much, honestly, a lot of that was being in a stable relationship with someone that I loved and someone that had been hurt. I mean, I don't want to overshare because this, it's your story to tell, all your stories to tell, but living with you and being your partner and trying to be emotionally supportive, and then just knowing some of the things that have happened to you because of misogyny in your past, it really hits me hard, and it just makes it so much clearer than what it was before, that like there's a real struggle now that we can, now that I can resonate with it. From, it's my partner, you're my other half, and it's really not acceptable. And that's something where when we met, I remember we had a lot of conversations because you were very, very, very hostile in some of your reactions, especially towards people that don't have the same political views as yourself. I don't want to get too in the weeds, but also, we haven't even said hi or what this is, but thanks for being here. This is the Comfort is the Coffin podcast, and
Hi.
this is our cathartic version. It's our cathartic way to have conversations and send them out there. Conversations that we have with each other all the time, conversations that make us feel uncomfortable, that make other people feel uncomfortable. And it really doesn't matter how people feel, what people think of what we have to say. It's more just a release for us. And if anyone out there enjoys what we have to say and wants to participate in any way, feel free to reach out and enjoy. Thank you. um I don't
Yeah.
want to distract from what we were talking about, but
No, it's okay. We're talking about misogyny and how it shaped our, or it helped us understand why we do what we do in our relationship. Brief introduction. My name is Stephanie. I'm a Leo. I have ADHD. I'm an alcoholic. Um, I don't like long walks on the beach. I love apple cider.
I love that about you, by the way.
Thank you.
Not just the apple cider, the that you don't like long walks on the
Yeah.
beach. I might be the only guy out there that does. Well, no, it might be the opposite way, but
Yeah.
I'd also, I could go on a long walk, but
I
we
just,
don't have to.
we don't have to. That's the thing about choice. You don't have to. But
That's so true, and it applies to so many things. It's crazy.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I mean, even back to what we were talking about, just kind of going into this, just we are who we are. It's like it's a choice. You're
It's a choice
you're
to
not
be who you
confined.
are.
Exactly, it's a choice to be who you are. I mean, I'm not talking about sexual preference and what gender someone may consider themselves, because that is
Entirely
completely
your
different.
thing and your journey.
Yeah, and if anyone misinterprets what we're saying, and with those situations, it's like no. But dang.
Yeah, I mean, let's say misogyny, how it shaped our relationship. Well, I knew I was very hostile at the beginning of our relationship.
This is, I love you so much.
I was very much against like, you know, men. And I still am against
And
like men talking to me, but it's a specific type of man. A specific type of man who's not quite yet evolved mentally. And that for me, it's like the fact that you haven't evolved makes me think like you haven't been talking to the same people that I have and you haven't been opened up to that. Or like, I think just having people question why they do what they do and why they think what they do really humbles you down and makes you feel like there's something to think about there. And some people don't want to think about their actions. They don't want to think about their life because one, they may be too busy, or they stay busy so they don't have to think about themselves. Because lately I've been like avoiding like sitting down too much, like when I've been at work, or like I've been avoiding like staying too stagnant or being without an activity or a task, just because I know for a fact that like with depression the way I am, it's like it'll hit me quick if just stop doing. And with ADHD, that's very like, I have to stay stimulated to be happy. I have to achieve things in order to kind of like see that I am capable. And so, like, with having those like variables with me, like, I have the concept to be able to think and be able to have conversation in my head while I'm doing things. Other people blank out when they're doing tasks, and I feel like it's hard for me to do that. And so I understand that other people haven't taken that time to really question their existence, questions their place in the universe, and come to terms with their mortality.
Yeah. I think I share with you similar thoughts where when I was a lot younger, well, maybe not as young as you were, but like as soon as getting out of high school, from then on to like my mid 20s, I just kept having like this feeling like I was gonna die early and like all these irrational fears of death. And through all that irrational fear, which now I understand from what I've seen and heard and been told, that it's a form of mental illness. And I mean, thinking that you're gonna die at an early age when you're a young person, which most young people these days feel that way. It's crazy. Like it's a mental illness. It's like something's going on in your brain chemistry. You know, you need some support, and we don't find a way to give it to people. It seems like,
Yeah.
but I used to feel that way a lot, and it took a long time of me to mess up, mess up in a way that I hurt people's feelings, mess up in a way that I did all these bad things. Not anything illegal, but it made me really, it like it took me a long time to be humbled and to like, no, this isn't about me. It was more like, I was, at least from my experience, it was kind of like a selfish thought, like, oh, the world's gonna end, I'm gonna, like, like it was just all thinking about myself and like overanalyzing myself.
Yeah.
Also, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about half the time.
It's okay. I wouldn't say that it's exactly a mental illness to think like that, but I would say it's a big symptom of the world that we live in. I mean, with the way that, you know, I would say here specifically in American society, is that there was a time when a lot of people had a lot of hope. And I think that was more in the 80s. There was more room for innovation, more room for economic support, and things weren't, from what I assume, as expensive. Whereas when we started being young and growing up in an era that wanted to kind us to break barriers and break the glass ceiling as women, I feel like it's hard for us to come to terms that there's more to life past your 20s, because you don't assume you're going to live past your 20s because of the society we live in. And
Yeah.
the factors and the variables that I see that make us think that are the fact that, with going to college, for me, example, like when I was in high school, it was all about training to go to college, all about getting the good grades to get into a good school. And then, I didn't know that I felt this really, but I felt like I had to finish school before it was 25, or by a certain age, because I'm like, well, at least I can live the last few years I have left
Oh wow.
to enjoy the career and the money, and I can give that all to my family before I pass away. I don't know why I had that imagination, but it's because I knew for a fact that, like, regardless of me as a woman, relationships were going to stay the same. Relationships and marriages were the way I saw them in my life and in other people, was that it was never going to be me being the main character. It was never going to be me doing my own independent thing and being happy to do that. And so, any relationship I had with anyone, I would kind of try to fight for that, even though there was no reason to.
Like there was in some relationships, would you say it was irrational to fight
Yes.
for it?
Yes. It was irrational and it was aggressive. And I feel like there's like an imbalance where men are we're men and women, the way that we grew up from the 90s is that women were supposed to be powerful and they're gonna come up in life, and then men wanted to create their own little thing too, where they're like, we gotta keep the manly men manly, we gotta keep the he-man woman haters up to date and make them feel as great as possible, you know? But there was different roles given to those people to come up together. So instead of working together, there's a separation. Whereas I feel like in the 90s, especially for boys, there was like a disadvantage in terms of the girl power movement.
Hmm.
Because I feel like boys could have been more inspired to talk about their feelings, more inspired to be outside of sports, to be more in dancing, to engage more with music and their emotions and being able to talk about things. So there's nothing wrong with sport necessarily. It's the culture within the sport that bothers me.
I've seen some pretty toxic behavior, specifically from people that are big sports fans. And I hope that it doesn't mean that everyone else like that is, because I have a lot of friends that are huge sports fans and are not that way. Although, hey, some of them have their own
Mm-hmm.
misogynistic, interesting personalities. Just like I do. Like that's the thing. I'm not even saying I'm better than anyone. I'm just saying like I'm I'm aware that I have these programmed characteristics, whether it's through my upbringing or whether through the genetics that my ancestors handed down to me and the stuff that they learned in their life too. Because I honestly, genuinely believe that if their entire lifetimes, all of my grandfathers and great grandfathers, they all lived in a misogynistic world, those things are still imprinted on me to this day. And I'm fighting to not have it come out every single day, you know?
Yeah.
It's getting better. I'm evolving, and that's the whole thing. Just like I feel like people that are like, "Oh no, that's stupid." I don't like that at all. Thank you so much, by the way. I feel like a lot of the things that I say, you understand kind of where I'm going with it, and a lot of the times I have these hot takes that go nowhere. But you have such a beautiful way of bringing things together, and I love having conversations with you because of that. That's we bonded from our first conversation pretty quickly.
I think I have a way of organizing people's thoughts for them
Hmm.
when they don't know what they're trying to say, because maybe it's like fresh to them to say it,
It's
where
like off the cuff, and
like it's raw.
yeah.
Whereas for me, it's like, I know this is weird, and I know it's like a symptom of anxiety or part of my ADHD. Like, I constantly rehearse what I'm gonna say, whether or not that question is gonna come to me. Like, like I mentioned before with him as my husband, is that when I was a little kid and I obviously had no friends, I would have a survey in my head ready for questions to ask people, and I would have my answers ready, but no one ever asked me the fucking questions I was ready for, but I was always ready to give an answer. Like, for example, like, what's your favorite bird?
Well, now I know what I would answer.
What's your favorite bird?
My favorite bird? You
Mhm.
made it my favorite bird.
Puffin.
Yes,
That's my
I know.
favorite bird. I love birds are interesting. There's so many neat ones. Anyway, so like I've had time to get my thoughts in order for the most part, or at least have that self-awareness, but not the execution to help myself, unfortunately. That's the problem with having ADHD, is that you're self-aware. You know what your actions look like half the time because
as you're going through the actions.
yeah, you notice it and then you kind of feel like I'll just I started it, I might as well complete it, but at the same time you don't complete it anyway because you hesitate in the during the process. But anyway, with ADHD, it's like you have a self-awareness. You're willing to talk about it just as regularly. Like this is how I would talk to my therapist. It took me a year to cry in front of my therapist. And my therapist was pretty decent and good to me as a person.
I've heard a lot of experiences of different people with their therapists, and I have to agree. Just because from what you've explained to me, much better experience than other people have had.
Mhm.
But I've also not had bad experiences, so I feel like it's definitely about finding the right one for
Yes.
you, right?
Yeah. And you have to be careful what type of therapist you get because it could be the type of person who would want to change you right away before you're ready, or they won't be trying to change you at all because it might go against their moral or their ethics as a therapist. And for me, it's like with my therapist, it was nice because he would ask me the questions that I should have been asking instead of going into my default questions where I question every motive I have. He made me question people's actions towards me. He made me more aware of the fact that other people's actions will affect me. How I react to them is entirely up to me. I'm responsible for that part. I'm responsible for whether or not I feel like an asshole about it or if I feel like sad about it and also like things I need to work on. But obviously, he didn't diagnose me with ADHD, so he didn't know what was all going on in my scrambly brain, but I didn't know I had ADHD either.
Do you think now looking back, like, oh,
I feel like I
he's a saint?
traumatized that
He's
man. Yeah,
he's
that
like,
pobrecito señor.
like I would feel the same way too. I'm like, oh dang.
Yeah. And so, like, not knowing that, like, as a therapist, I feel like he really was just like, this bitch is a mess. I don't get her. Like, she doesn't want to do things, but like, she knows she needs to change, you know? And he helped me a lot with my, my symptoms of PTSD. He made me focus on my sleep issues. And to this day, I still have sleep issues, but
You've
it's
gotten a
never,
lot better.
I've gotten
I
a
will
lot.
say, even from like when I would worry about you when we were first dating,
Yeah.
because you would tell me like I didn't go to sleep till like 2, 3 in the morning. It's like I couldn't, and then you would have nightmares more often too. I feel like you've gotten
Yeah. I
more
mean,
stable.
the green lettuce helps.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. In California, or herbs. Let's call them
Herbs,
herbs. Yeah, we have an herb
herbs,
garden.
herbs. We don't
Herbs.
have a herb garden.
We don't have a herb garden, but
Not that type of herb garden.
we don't have any type of herb garden, which is funny that we're even mentioning it. But soon, we will soon.
Soon, yes. But with that, it's like I look back at my therapist and I just like I feel bad for him. But I do adore him and I do and he even wrote a letter to me like after we were done, like because I had to leave school and that's where I got my free therapy. It was like, I'm worried about you going out into the real world.
Oh,
And I was kind of sad to read that, but at the same time I'm like,
but
yeah, there's something there that
that's so that's such a good way to put it, because then that kind of puts you in the right mindset. Like, hey, I should probably be careful.
yeah.
Like in a way, like, but I guess it depends how people take it. But that's how I would be thankful. I'd be like, thank you for telling me, I guess.
Yeah, and it for a second it made me feel like I was like, okay, maybe I have this imagination that no one thinks I'm capable. Because I've always
Mm.
had that perspective as a little kid. My parents think I'm stupid and incapable. They would always talk to me, and they still talk to me here and there, like, oh, it's because your mind can't handle it. Or tu cabeza no está tan fuerte para entender eso.
Mm.
Or they're like, they would want, I'm like, but I think of suicide all the time as a child. How am I not ready to think about these things? How am I not ready for you to tell me and warn me?
Now, your family never knew, right?
Yeah,
Like about your suicidal thoughts at that age.
no, and I knew they were bad, so I
Oh,
never brought it to their attention because I'm like, I'm gonna get in trouble for this shit. Like, this isn't what kids are supposed to do. I'm supposed to think of like fun stuff, Barbies and
wow, that's so.
playgrounds,
Because you've playground. I mean, hey,
dirt.
dirt,
I did.
tree, acorn.
I mean, I did have like a childhood. I did explore the earth, the dirt in my parents' yard, and I had a lot of fun with the dogs. Yes, but that was really the only real fun I had that I recall. Maybe some fun with cousins here and there, but the memories are kind of not there because I feel like my head was in another place when that all happened.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and just again, I don't want to like overshare, but just with some of the things that you've been through, it kind of makes sense. Just like the kind of thoughts you were having, and even maybe some of the night terrors you were having, and that type of stuff. So, I mean, yeah, I love you.
I love you too.
I know this is a podcast, but here we are.
Bonding. Yeah. But yeah,
I
like
think what's sorry.
oh no, it's okay. Continue.
No, I was just gonna say I think what set me off about the whole misogyny thing, because I've kind of been thinking about it the whole day was just saw a few videos online on the YouTubes, just going on there. And I think you might have seen this video with me, but it was just I follow a creator called H3,
Hmm.
the H3 podcast. Now they have their own podcast. They've had it for years.
Ethan Klein.
Ethan Klein, exactly. Teddy Fresh, Ela Klein. You know,
Oh, she's sweet.
I'm a big fan. But no, they were just talking. He was talking on a video, just he did by himself, about sexism in gaming, and he was putting up a couple examples, and one was just this whole situation with a streamer called Pokimane, where someone sent people to go on her live stream and like comment all these negative things, and then because he did that, because that's a specific rule on Twitch where they were streaming, they can't do that. Obviously,
Hmm.
he was banned. But then that's where you start seeing the real misogyny, where people start questioning if the validity of the ban, but instead of questioning it for saying like for being ignorant, being like, oh, there's no rule that says you can't do that, and there is a rule that says you can't do that, they start lying about why the person
About why
gets
they got
banned.
banned.
And it's just like what he highlighted was, it just really kind of shocked me, which was they lied by saying that he got banned for saying that all her fans, like that her fans should stop watching her because they're not gonna, they're not gonna, what's a good way to put it without being too vulgar,
Oh, they're not gonna
they're not gonna,
visually enjoy her because she now has a because that person that's
they're never gonna be like her boyfriend,
yeah,
they're never gonna be like her booty call type thing. He was just
yeah.
saying all these guys are only there to watch her because she's hot. They should just like dip out, guys, you're never gonna get it. And it just kind of frustrated me because this is like a streamer that I was never familiar with, but in the last maybe year and a half during 2020, so the last 2 years, I got to know her. Really funny personality, really cool, just good person to watch play games, if that's even a thing that people like doing. I do every now and
Yeah.
then. And it just kind of like upset me, and I think that's like what has gotten me even more seeing the misogyny in the world, and just kind of the way people react to it shows you. It's like a self-report. It shows you what their actual intentions are. Like those people that were saying
Mean things.
mean things, they're probably just upset. I don't know. It's
With that whole attack, it like reminds me of like I guess like a personal story that I shared with you the other day is that we were running, I would think I was in 12th grade, and we were running for my conditioning PE class. And I was already a runner. I was used to running long miles already, long distance. So I would be able to run up to 8 miles a day. Obviously not as a sprinter, but like as like
like
a
cross country though, just
cross
like at a
country.
steady pace.
Yeah.
And
And I was capable of doing all of that at that time, you know. So I was pretty athletic, but like I didn't over challenge myself at school because I knew I was going to work out at home. So I'm like, I'm not going to burn out while I'm at school and go hard when I know I'm going to go hard later. You know, I'm just using this to kind of like take advantage of the weights. So the first run at the beginning of every class was a warm up run. So you just do a quarter of a mile. You just go around the circle, no
like the
big
lap.
deal. Yeah. And I started jogging it because I'm like, I know I'm very capable of running this. I'm very fine with it. So I started jogging and no big deal. And I passed these two guys. One of them nickname is Fernie. Fernie comes Fernie like starts sprinting. And I didn't notice it because I'm way past him. I'm running my slow pace. And then he runs up to me next to me at my pace. And then he's like, sorry, I can't get beat by a girl.
So he stayed at your pace just to say that?
Just to say that. And then he sprinted
Oh.
way past me like some road runner and like finished the round. And that mentally hurt me to think that he wanted to do that because of me and
Yeah.
because I was a woman or a girl. And at that time, like
Was he Hispanic, by the way?
yeah,
Okay.
yes. And he was a year younger than me. So I don't know why, but like with the and we grew up kind of like in the same street, but we didn't grow up with each other. But in my head it was kind of like disrespectful in the community that we are and also the vibe we're going for. It bothered me.
Yeah.
And me as a person, I don't like being reminded of my place as a woman in the American society, especially Mexican culture. Like, I love my culture and I love my family and how they introduced me to the culture and everything that we do, you know. Um, it does bother me that my place is not respected because I'm defaulted to being a woman because of the way I was born. And that's the only thing I hate about being a woman, the misogyny.
Yeah.
Like, I sometimes wish I could just be a man and no one would bother me.
And
Like,
it's the truth. Like, there's like, I know a lot of people talk about white privilege. Like, I don't even want to go there right now. But male privilege is a huge thing. Like, even like that's one thing. Sometimes I'll tell people as a funny joke, although it might be not very funny to some people. It's like, I love privilege, and I say that because I have a shit ton of privilege that I go through my day with, and I assume that it's not there,
yeah.
right? And just because I'm a guy, there's certain things that do not get in my way as much as like they would get in your way
Hmm.
in all sorts of different areas. Uh, and I think you did mention this story, and I like that you mentioned it again, just because. So, like, I think one thing that makes me think of is, on the one hand, like that's where I see my programming. That's where I see I'm evolving. Because not long ago, I would have said something like that as a joke, but in my eyes, it wouldn't have seemed as bad, right? As
Hmm.
the way you felt it. That doesn't make it okay. It's like, and I truly feel that, like, maybe in his point of view, he wasn't saying it to be this aggressive, like super dominant person that's like, oh, I'm the guy. Who knows? I mean, maybe, but it does show me that it's a symptom of how where he's being raised, like what kind of upbringing he has, and what kind of ideals his family's instilling in him. And that's kind of what I mean by like the misogyny, and that's also why I ask if he's Hispanic, because obviously, I mean, we're both fully Hispanic, fully Mexican, and misogyny in Hispanic culture is
Very, very obvious.
very, very obvious, very, very strong. Like they're very, very much against being machista, like, it's called. But it's, at the end of the day, it's misogyny,
Yeah.
and that's something we're still trying to break through. I'm lucky that in my family it's different than maybe some other people might have it.
Hmm.
But what I'm trying to get to is, so I understand maybe where he might have said it without meaning what he meant, but that
Hmm.
doesn't take away from the fact of how it affected you
Yeah.
and the progress we're all trying to make. Like, now, as I'm growing older, it's like we're trying to make progress. We're not trying to stay where we've been, because where everything that I've known of where I've been has been pretty shitty up until this point. And
Yeah.
like, not to discount that things have been getting better. Every decade things get better, but guarantee you something too, like in the 90s, exactly what we're going through started, which is that people started not getting paid what they should have gotten paid. Like, we should have been getting major raises starting in the 90s going into the 2000s, because things have been hiking up in price, and obviously no one's making more money. But I think the pandemic definitely showing that. Not to get too political, I mean,
And also the 2008 housing crisis.
yeah, I mean,
I mean, you were affected by that.
yeah, I mean, that whole thing was like super unexpected. It's just, there's so much there that I
Yeah.
could pull from. Um, so one thing I'll say too, my name is Luis. I didn't introduce myself at all up until this point. I'm Stephanie's husband. We've been married for a year in November, right now.
Hmm.
So yeah, but yeah, that so my family lost their house in 2008 when the stock market crashed. Um, so I've always kind of been resentful of that, at many things. Like, I feel like for a while I was resentful of my parents because they had bought that house and they had gotten a settlement from like a lawsuit where my dad had a decent amount of money. He used it to buy a house, but it was much more than we were able to afford still. I believe so. And with the variable rates that were going on and everything that was going on, our payments went from 1,500 to like 35, $4,000, 3,500 to $4,000 within like 2 weeks. Like, they hiked up to 1,800 one day, and then I don't know, it's like 3,500. It's like, oh, so are we gonna be able to do this? And it's like, no, we're gonna have to go into bankruptcy, and they're gonna come and check and see what absolutely we need, and they're going to take everything else that we don't. They took some TVs. Luckily, they didn't take any cars, but like any value, anything of value that wasn't a necessity, they took to try to make more money, and
Mm-hmm.
so my parents struggled through that for a long time. I was resentful at the administration, the government at the time too, because they bailed out the banks, but they didn't bail out
The
people
people.
with their homes, right? But I mean, that whole thing's it's a mess. I mean, if we hadn't bailed out the banks, we would probably be paying like $500 for a gallon of gas now. Who knows? Like I think there should have been some,
Regulation.
not just regulation, some because some of the same stuff's right happening now. So yeah, there should have been more regulation. Some people would disagree, but also they should have honestly taken action against the bankers. It's like that's what
It's
you do to get to the root of the cause, not the people that were implementing it, but the people that thought of it, the people that knew this was going to happen and still
mm-hmm.
put all of our money at risk, livelihoods at risk.
Yes.
Yeah, but that whole thing definitely that affected me too. For a long time, my family was like going, like kind of jumping in and out of different cities, and it took a long time to be where we're at now, and I'm grateful. I think that's also part of like the humbling. I Although I was very privileged, I always felt like I didn't have much. Like I didn't I For a long time I just didn't feel like I had a home. Like I would have a house with my family, but like we'd be moving every year and a half or 2 years, so it didn't really feel like much of a home.
Mm.
This is the longest it's felt like a home. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that
Well,
instability.
your
Mm.
family's lived in their house for, I was talking to your mom about this, like 19 or 20 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or more than that?
I think maybe when I was like 1 or 2, we moved in.
Okay, so almost 30 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, no, I mean less than 30 years, but like
Yeah. Yeah.
25, 26 years.
Yeah. I'm like really glad they kept it and that they stuck to their guns. My mom has like this intuition with their finances, and I feel like a lot of people should acknowledge this about their partners if they're in a heterosexual relationship, that women will be able to handle the finances. It's just having that analytical financial like intelligence like encouraged. But I feel like, you know, you can work with a lot more details because you're used to working with details in your house. So, like, if you grow up like in that concept of like being put in the role of like the house and the housemaker and all that stuff, like, I feel like the finances is included in that because you're living in the environment.
Yeah.
You're,
Also, though, I've heard like phrases that I don't like of like older films where they're like, "Oh, my wife does all the bookkeeping," ha ha ha,
yeah,
and then they'll make a joke, and like they're making it at the expense of making fun of another guy
yeah,
for being the one that balances the checkbook, right?
yeah,
And that pisses me off because it's like there's nothing worse than like straight men making fun of other straight men.
for handling
I
their
mean,
shit.
there's nothing worse than people just making fun of each other, but like you're making another guy feel like it's bad to do that because your fear of being slightly effeminate. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, we both are very strong opponents of being gender neutral in most of our thoughts and processes, I feel like.
yeah. I mean, yeah. For to circle back to the Twitch streamer and my example on for Fernie like chasing me and like running past me,
Yeah.
is that the guy who was attacking Pokemon for, you know,
Pokimane.
Pokemon, forgive me,
No, it's okay.
um, is that he not only, you know, attacked her in the comments, whatever this Twitch site is, you know, is that he went out of his way to go to the comments and tell people, right, to
Well,
attack her.
so not just that. So he was on a live stream
Yeah.
and he has thousands and thousands of followers, people on the live stream with him. And he tells those people to go on her live stream and comment negative stuff. So she has thousands of people randomly joining her live stream while she's doing her thing, saying things like die, fuck off. It's like stuff that's completely inappropriate. It just, And it's out of it's like it just hits you like a wave of bullshit, because
Yeah, because
it's unexpected. You're just doing your job to interact and you're doing your best, and here comes some guy that has his own fucking agenda and just ruining what you're doing.
right, it's always men who,
And then they're the ones getting upset that he got banned
yeah,
and lying about
for
why.
bullying her. That to me bothers me, and it bothers you. And to me, it bothers me more as a girl, I guess, or like in the sense that I'm feminine or whatever,
Yeah,
in the small sense that I'm feminine, is that she went out of her way to create this whole platform for herself. She didn't even give herself a feminine name for a nickname. She picked Pokimane, which is like, I know, a silly way of saying Pokemon.
yeah.
And she didn't pick a feminine name at all.
Well,
And
even like Maine, it's
yeah,
like a lot of guys use that like, "What's up, Maine?"
yeah,
Like, so I feel like it's not a very
yeah,
feminine name to go by.
yeah. And like, she's, whatever she looks like, she may be cute, she may be gorgeous, whatever the sense there is, that she's going out of her way to create this platform. And suddenly it's all about her being a girl. Why isn't this man going after other males this way? And it's because he's upset that he's not getting the same attention from his own followers.
Yeah,
And to me, it's like, if you're not even that great at your content or making your product or whatever, that people aren't interested,
and you have to
you're
go after other
you have
people
to go
to.
up to after other people to get more attention, because any fame is good fame, right?
But drama, yeah, I guess a lot of people go for drama for the clout, right? A lot of
Exactly.
people love getting into some drama.
And then there's people who follow the aggressive people, like that guy, and they go out of their way to attack this person they don't even know how they're going to be affected by it. Like, let's say you're making like a pot of clay live streaming, for example, and all of a sudden you
It's a
get these
cool
comments.
idea. I'd like to try that, by the way.
Yeah, I would love to do that. But the concept that if there's someone out there who hates me that much, is sending me hate through my little video of just creating clay pottery, like, I'm just like, bro, I'm just living my life.
Yeah,
Like, why do you have to do this to me? Like, there's so many other people you can hate on, but you do it specifically to this woman, and she wants nothing to do with him. She did not invite him to her stream.
not
She
at
did
all.
not invite him to be part of her, because she knows for a fact, I don't want nothing to do with that person.
I mean, most
And
people like that she finds out about them because
they do stuff
they
like
do
that.
exactly. They go about bullying.
And then that to me is like, sir, have you any like conscious idea of what the hell you're doing? Have you any idea what type of effect you're having? Because there's people who are watching you and they think that it's okay to act that way as well. And so I think there's too much like credit give it to him as a person, that people don't question why he's going after her. People should be like, "Hey bro, can you stop picking on her? Like, why
Yeah.
are you doing this?
Well,
Why what do you get out of this, friend?" Like,
there's a lot of, and that's also what it makes me like upset about it. There's a lot of misogyny out there, and when people are like, "Nah, there's none," I'm like, "That's a perfect example." These people don't. I mean, yeah, he got banned, but like there was a whole community of people coming to rally behind him, saying, "Oh, he got banned because of this dumb thing," and they were just lying, saying that he got banned because he's told
and
his
they
fans that she
and
had
they
a
do it without
boyfriend.
question.
Yeah, exactly. They do it. They don't even know what they're fighting. They're just like, Pokemon, we have to fight against
Yes.
her. Like she's a woman. That is what it is. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff out there. We could go on this tirade forever.
Yeah.
Um, but I kind of I want to wrap it up a little clean, just
Mhm.
and kind of like come to like an understanding, because I mean, we'll definitely get into this again in the future, and we can keep having conversations about this. But there's so much out there that unless we as men start holding ourselves accountable, and I don't mean nailing yourself to a cross and then being like, I'm a bad guy, oh, people don't like me. And I get it, some people's psychology might be different, and I'm not trying to say hold yourself, like burden yourself by the actions you may have had or that you're trying to fight against, but be aware of your actions, be aware
Mhm.
of the tone you give people, be aware of what you think when you're thinking about certain things, and like just try to like look back at what you're thinking or what you've been thinking and see if any of this applies. I know it applies to me. Like I know people will tell me it's just the way you are, you know, it's not you're not like misogynistic. I'm like, I mean, it is the way I am, but I am misogynistic and I'm trying to actively change it. Like it's
Yes.
not about being perfect. None of us are perfect. And when I say I'm misogynistic, I'm not holding it like a fucking stake to the heart. I feel like
Mhm.
a lot of guys see it as death, admitting that they see it as like the death of their masculinity, the death of what they know of being a man. It isn't that like at all,
No.
and you're constantly redefining what being a man is, and any guy out there could make it whatever the fuck they want to make it,
Yes.
and that's kind of what I want to get out of this whole thing. Like that's one of the things I wanted to like get out there and say that we as men we should just be more open to accepting responsibility and just moving forward. We should be more
Mhm.
open to evolving, and I have a lot
Yes.
of friends that are in that process too.
Yes. And I will say this with your deprogramming, I've noticed, and I think we've talked about it, is expecting you to change within a day is having too high of an expectation, and it's completely unrealistic. So, let's say you always grew up in misogyny, all of a sudden you become aware of it. You become aware of the actions you've done towards your family members. You're suddenly feeling guilty. Then the next week you do something that seems misogynistic, and someone will call you out and be like, "Well, you said you weren't going to be this way."
Yeah,
Or, "Why are you apologizing for the same thing you've been doing over and over?" And to me, it's like for me, I can't stop saying sorry. It's really hard for me.
yeah,
And people have been telling me to stop saying sorry. And I owe no one really an apology for what the fuck I'm saying sorry for. But I just assume everything's
yeah,
my fault. And the thing is, when people try to change that, I mean, when I try to change it, it doesn't happen in a day. And I keep ending up apologizing to myself and being like, hey, you're taking this way too hard on yourself. You need to chill because it just comes naturally as unclenching.
yeah. Like
And
the you're right. The de-shedding sometimes brings to like letting go of some of these programmings of some of this programming means that I'm gonna have some of these memories again, and I'm gonna like, oh, it's gonna make me feel shittier than I probably felt before
yeah,
because it's like a whole process. But at the end of it, you're gonna be a lot better for
yeah.
it.
Like for me, it's like, I guess what I used to have as a little, not as a kid, but like someone as a young adult, I would have like stereotypes towards different ethnicities. And I never thought badly of these ethnicities alone, but I would have those stereotypes in my head. So now that I'm older, I've worked on those stereotypes and being better and applying it. But it didn't take a day, it took years because I had that ingrained in me from my own culture and my own family. Not directly in my family, but around it. And so if you're going to go on the journey of like being open to yourself and being open to opportunity, just let it all happen slowly and know that when you come to that moment where you're like, I did something rude, something that was too toxic or hyper masculine that maybe I should have held back on, just say, talk to yourself. Say, well, what would you say to a little kid if he made that same mistake? You
Yeah,
wouldn't just go outright. It's just like, you're so fucking stupid. Why are you doing this? You would tell the little kid, like, hey, take it one day at a time. Don't get
yeah.
upset. You're gonna get it.
You gotta be easy on yourself in a way,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, and it's funny you say that because just my little nephew, he's about 2.5 now, and he's showing those characteristics of like being able to understand now what he's saying and doing, and the emotional responses there where he's learning his emotions. And if you react negatively to him messing up, like if he messes up and you're like, no, he'll get really sad. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. Like he acknowledges he messes up, and you really, that's a great way to look at it. Like even though you might see a kid and be like, well, we have to be more careful with them and not necessarily with us adults. It's like one thing I've learned is that you have to talk to your inner child because your inner child is
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 the one that got the most, um, what's the opposite of benefit?
yeah, like the
The mo
worst, like
the most damage.
yeah, the most, yeah.
The one who had to build that thick skin, the one that had to make that character, the one that had to make the masculine character that you carry.
And it might be different for some people, right? Like some people it might have happened later in life, but
Yeah.
I know for me it happened very early on. Just unfortunately, I came from a very dysfunctional family, so there's just certain things that are hard for me to do and to be open about. Although I will say, just I want to circle back really quick to you were saying, like basically you said it's okay to have to apologize like multiple times, and that's something I've had to do where once I was becoming aware of my toxic behaviors towards my family, I wasn't able to stop them. Like that they didn't stop right away, and still to this day they're not completely gone. This is years, working on it. But what did happen is I became aware and I started working on going about it differently, and I noticed a huge improvement. But then it always felt like I was taking a step back. And I think that's what I want people to not do. I don't want people to feel like, well, I opened up, I'm being more aware of this stuff, and then people are treating me worse. Like
Mm-hmm.
my family's treating me worse. That happened to me. I mean, my family, because I wasn't able to stop myself from doing these behaviors, but I was able to be aware and at least go back and talk to them, be like, I'm sorry, I'm working on it, I'm trying to be better. By the third or fourth time that happens, my family members, multiple of them, are just saying like, "I don't want to hear you apologize again," and that can be really, really hard to hear when all you want to do is apologize when you can't control your toxic behaviors. So even when that happens, don't stop working on yourself. Don't take it to this place where it's gonna become the opposite of beneficial. It's going to become more damage to yourself. You have to overcome, and that's what I feel like I'm still overcoming. Recently I got in a fight with one family member. It wasn't really a fight, I was just trying to give my opinion, whatever. I have my misogynistic traits, and maybe because they were a woman I was trying to talk over them. But even at that, we just didn't end up leaving off on good terms, and they told me that they don't want to hear me apologize again, and that really hurt me, and I think it's changed our relationship now, which is unfortunate because it was just improving so much more. Although having a conversation with that person about that instance, I feel like now that's what I'm understanding. I'm not going to be petty about it, but I need to have a conversation about what happened, and there needs to be closure, and I think that's what I'm missing, why I
Yeah.
can't stop doing these toxic behaviors, because I'm putting it all on myself when it's I'm half the battle, and then I also have to, my family has to do their part. And I feel like my family's not the type of family that we don't talk things out. We explode and then we don't talk for a few weeks, or we don't talk for a few days, and then we act like nothing happened afterwards. And I think that's why. Because
Yes.
we're not having the closure we need to have with what we're going through.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I'm making the mistake. Instead of saying sorry, I have to I could say sorry because I am sorry, but I also have to acknowledge to them as I'm saying sorry. We need to talk about this in the future, because if not, there's going to be a wall now. Like and I can't keep building walls. I have so many already that I'm trying to break down.
Yes. And with what you're saying, like the whole like apology thing, there's work that your family's not doing that you are, and they don't see it as work. They see you defaulting to like
Toxic behavior.
toxic behavior, or they think you're manipulating them in a different way. And I think when I start acting a little slightly different with different people, they would be like, what are you doing? Or like, what do you think you're doing when you say it like that? Or what do you think you're doing talking to me like that? Or, when I start voicing my opinion around my parents about their relationship, which I was very young and I shouldn't have been put in that position, but I feel like because my family is different than his. In my family, as a woman, we do have more of a voice. My mom was given more of a voice. Rest assured, it's because she's a little louder than my dad, and my dad obviously is like kind of not chatty, so she always had the voice there. But I feel like he appreciated her taking the lead because he also had those like toxic behaviors, but my mom was willing not to put up with them, and she would always kind of give us that right as like girls in the family, like, yeah, he's being a little too much about that specific role as a man. And then so when my dad, started changing for the better, because we wouldn't let him be machista with us. We were up front. We didn't like it. We told them like, no, we're not going to do that. And it's because we're girls. You're telling us to do that way. But the thing is, we didn't ask to be women. We didn't ask to be born this way.
Yeah.
We didn't ask to be given these rules. If we would have selected what rules we wanted, definitely we should have been born a boy. I wish I had been born a boy. And so um, because of that, my dad changed because he understood. He's like, it's not your fault. It's not your fault as girls to be defaulted to this. And I'm thankful he did that work. But the thing is, your family hasn't done that work. My family still has a lot of work to do anyway. And your family has a different type of work to do.
I feel like in my
And
family, I don't mean to interrupt.
no, go
I
ahead.
just want to add one thing really quick. A lot of people in my family are doing their own work
Yeah.
in their own way. Some people are not. So that just it kind of muddies some things up because like I'm in a place now where I can at least try to see everyone's growth, and I'm trying to not get on people's nerves with
Yes.
how I used to behave. And still now, it's just like I still get so much pushback, even though I'm trying to cater to people in a way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, with my family, I know I've grown a lot outside of what they are as people. And I love them and I adore their traits and the way they are. But I know there's a lot of growth to be done there because of the way they're living or the things they haven't acknowledged. And I wish they would, but I know that if I force them to do it, if I push them to just see this little thing that I'm trying to get them to see, they'll be like, you're trying to change me too much, and you're like forcing me to do things I don't
Yeah,
want to do. And I just want people to know out there who trying to improve themselves, trying to apologize for their actions, trying to change this, regardless of your apology to the person that you may have hurt, let's say in a severe way, or like, for example, if I bullied someone, I know I'm not owed that forgiveness. I know that it's okay if they still hate me after that because I can now still be a better person after that. I can think about being better after that, regardless of their forgiveness. And I notice that a lot with people who are in relationships and they take a break or they separate where one is improving and the other one is growing a different way, or maybe they wanted the relationship done and they want nothing to do with the person, but they just told them they had to grow up. And
mm,
I've seen this in relationships where the man is just improving himself, doing better in his way for the purpose of being back together with that person. And then they try to get back together with that person. That person obviously doesn't want them back. So now they feel fooled. And now they feel like, well, I didn't get what I want. What was the point of all that growth? But that's not real growth because you did it with the incentive. You did it with the goal of getting someone who you were not even deserving of because human beings, we are who we are. We have our own personalities, our own choices, our own interests, and we deserve that dependence on ourselves and independence, but also we need to be open to each other.
I think it's a big
And
point.
and that man in that example is going to be angry that he's not getting the woman he wants. But the thing is that the idea wasn't for you to improve for the woman. The idea was for you to see your potential as a person, to see how you can change. And who knows, maybe that woman that you're still after, she's probably not evolved herself. She probably just wanted to get away because there was something about you she didn't like. And that's okay. People are very capable of having different preferences at different times. And people need to talk about that. People need to talk about where they're at mentally
Yeah,
and talk about what they want right away because when you and I got together, I know for a fact that like I told you I was needy right away and I was a very like
yeah. You said
hostile person.
you said those things, and you also said I don't know if you said I require, but that's how I remember. It's like I require a lot of physical intimacy, like affection. And I was just like, okay, like I've always been the type of guy where it's like I'm not holding your hand, like I'm not really into that. I had always been the type of guy that would say I don't want to get married. I don't really care, like it's not. I think because I saw dysfunction in my own household, I was like, I don't want to bring another child into this world, so I don't want to have a family. I don't want to have a partner. Although obviously I would go out with different women, but it was like the day that I truly, because I had just gotten out of a relationship that kind of hurt me. Like I wasn't coming from a place of anger, and it wasn't coming from a place of like pettiness or just like of wanting to be better than someone. It came from a place of love for myself and understanding that I didn't need anyone to be happy. And like I told myself that after that relationship, I'm like, you're totally good on your own. Like I know that sometimes when you're alone, it feels like you need someone, but you don't.
Mhm.
And you're totally fine, dude. And like I truly embraced it, and I like gave myself almost like a hug of affection for myself. And like literally 2 weeks later, I met you.
Yeah.
And that's what trips me out because I've never been someone that's like, there's no such thing as a coincidence. Well, kind of,
Yeah.
I've had my time now,
Yeah.
but that cemented it for me. I just feel like when you're actually evolving and you're on a pace to be the best version of yourself, the best version of your soulmate or your partner will come out too if you're meant to have them. I guess.
Yeah.
I don't
And
know. It seems kind of fairy tale-y.
yeah, and our story is kind of fairy tale I would say, in a good way, because it worked out for us. I will say that sometimes when people spread this story of like, oh, once you feel content with yourself, you'll find your partner. And sometimes if you already have that partner and you're not content, like figure out why you're content. Is your partner ready for you to grow too? Like, have they been waiting for you to grow up? Because they probably have. And it's like you don't need to be single, but you do need to be understanding that you and your partner need to get on the same page once you're
Yeah.
ready to start doing
Even
that.
and I notice it. I mean, I notice it in relationships that I know myself, where they're a good they're a good fit. They seem perfect for each other, but then just some of the toxic behaviors I've identified in myself, I see them coming off of them, and I'm just like, whoa, whoa, you might are you guys gonna talk about this later? Because if you guys are brushing this under the rug, this is not something I would brush under the rug
There's not
with
something we
you.
would not brush under the
Yeah,
rug.
it's something we would talk about even if it made us feel uncomfortable. And I mean that's the whole point of this.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's just we want to encourage people to make it work
Yeah.
with who they love. Not
Yeah.
just that, but you know.
Yeah. And I've met people who were in relationships who done the whole thing. It's like, oh, we have to break up so I can grow and explore. And it's like, I get it, but I feel like there's more motive to that concept. Obviously, to exploring different people if you want. But I feel like you don't always need that in order to understand that.
And it's funny because like I put myself in those shoes just to think like because I'm a super empathetic person. So like if someone tells me a story, I feel like I can put myself in those shoes without getting myself like too into it, I guess, or like but really feeling it. And like if I was to put myself in those shoes, of what you just described, honestly, I feel like once the act is done, it'd be like, what was the point of this?
Yeah.
What was the point of any of this?
Yeah.
Like there's no and that's the thing, like if you feel like you need to be sleeping with another person to make yourself happy, like I mean maybe that's just not the relationship we have.
Yeah.
But it's not something I understand. I just there's so many other ways of growing. You could grow together and separate at the same time in a way.
Yeah.
But
And I feel like people like especially women who, do that journey where they're like, I need to find myself. Like, I feel like you have found yourself. You just found yourself in a bad relationship with someone who doesn't want to grow up and you're trying to teach them a lesson by leaving.
hmm.
And that's understandable. My mom did that herself.
Well, I mean, that
I,
was a little different though, right?
I mean,
It was an extreme case because you guys, they already had kids,
yeah, but
and
I feel like women do that to this day to teach their men a
no,
lesson.
no,
And
yeah, you're
that's,
right.
and I feel like if you have to go to that extreme, and if you're the man listening to this and you're in that scenario, understand that there's been signs and symptoms that they have shown that they've been wanting you to grow. And I feel like your family shouldn't have to leave you for you to understand that.
Also, if you're a man listening to this stream or this podcast, whatever you're listening to, kudos to you. Send us an email, you'll get a free shirt.
For listening this far.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll extend that to like 3 people, 3 men. You gotta. I don't know why.
What's the code word if they email us?
No, well, if they mention this moment,
In the moment?
that's probably like at 110, right before 110, 109. Just
109.
109 is the code.
Okay.
Email us at comfortisacoffin.com. Wait, no. Comfort is a coffin at gmail.com
Yes.
currently. Email us 109 and your size, and you'll get a free shirt.
Yes.
We'll be in
Thank you.
contact.
Yes. And with that being said, it's like you as a person, a partner, you have to understand that you have to carry your weight in the relationship. And if that weight is too heavy for you, then there's something you need to talk about your partner with.
And that's something too. It just makes me think, before I met you, even though I was on a good path, there was so many things I wasn't talking about. So many things that I was feeling, not even understanding that I was feeling them.
Hmm.
And that's okay. For people that don't have a partner, that don't like have someone that they can open up to. I mean, it's tough, but you got to find someone. You got to find what you need to open up about and open up about it. I mean, some
Hmm.
people might just be keeping things from their friends. And I'm not saying that opening up about it's going to heal everything, and it might cause a
No.
little more, some disturbing things to happen. I open up to my friends all the time and they're just not ready to have these conversations. They look at me like I'm a weirdo. They make me feel like a weirdo, and I just choose to not make myself feel that way. So, you know, it's just one of those things. But
Yeah.
I would say opening up about things will only make you, in the long run, a much healthier person.
Yeah. When I started, actually, I've always been kind of open with my friends ever since high school, I think, because, I had no one else to talk to. I would only talk to my dog, and there's a certain point that I want some response from dogs, but obviously, that would make me end up in a grippy sock vacation if I talked to dogs and they talked back.
What if your dog could talk back to you only like for 5 minutes a month?
He would probably curse me out, how like call me stupid as fuck or
Every now and then, just
something, yeah.
stupid.
Or it's like I'll be like hearing it in the middle of the night. It's like, I wish you had fed me your steak, you selfish whore. Like I feel like my dog would do that. Like Willie, my baby boy Willie, he's
Oh,
blind and deaf, but he's very much a king in his own head, and he acts like a king.
Willie
He
the
don't give
King.
a fuck.
I love it.
Yes. And so
I love him.
yes. And so when I started opening up with my friends or I started talking to them about my thoughts, it would I feel like I made them uncomfortable, and looking back at it, I most definitely made them uncomfortable. Because I feel like as teenagers we were probably not mentally ready to handle that. But I got lucky with my friends, certain friends at that time, to kind of like try and understand me. They did their best, and I was very grateful for them for that. For example, Eddie and Hey Hey. Um they're both really good friends of mine. And anytime I talk to them about mental health stuff, they're open about it because we're all three of us are part of the alphabet mafia or LGBT.
Alphabet Mafia. I haven't heard that before. That's funny.
It's a TikTok thing from what I've learned.
Okay.
Um but since we're part of that community, like, or like the experiences of it, like I would say my experiences aren't an extreme. I just still feel a restraint coming out to like family members and stuff, and I still haven't come out to them as a pansexual person. Um, and so with us as friends going through those experiences, like we really like just we had to talk about it. We had to tell someone about these thoughts, these things that were just driving us mad, and holding them in and just thinking like, is this really how life is? Is this all it is? If this is all it is, then what the fuck are we doing? Like, why is this all we are? Why are we all just this bad to each other? It's like, again, to that foundation, it's like you should want good for others, you should want good for yourself. So it's like, my friend's parents would treat her like they weren't happy with her. Even mentioning the concept of being slightly gay, it's just would make them uncomfortable. They would be like, "Oh, what boys are you dating now?"
Yeah.
Or like, "Why don't you wear these girly things?" And they would buy them like little like lingerie. And it's like, why would you
Why?
like you're
Yeah.
already sexualizing your child into being sexual with a gender that she probably wants nothing to do with. Like
Dang.
like when I turned 15 for my quinceañera, I got lingerie as a gift.
What?
Like a 15-year-old, someone
Who?
gave me lingerie.
Who?
I don't remember. It didn't have a
Holy
name or
shit.
name. It had like a thong,
Did your
like a leg.
parents see it?
Yeah.
What they say?
They're like, "Oh, that's interesting."
The
My
fuck?
dad obviously didn't see it, but my mom
Oh yeah,
did.
yeah. Because as a father, if I had seen that, I would be figuring out who sent that and just
Yeah.
being like, here you go. I shouldn't have invited your ass.
And I didn't
What
think
the
of it
fuck?
as that bad as a child, that maybe an adult person saw me in that in their head. And I was 15
And
and
that just
it's disgusting.
I hate being a guy because it just like I feel like I have such an insight into how guys think because as I'm saying, I'm a fucking I'm a piece of shit in a way. No, that's a bad way to say it. I'm not.
Mhm.
I have my negative characteristics that I'm currently and gonna be constantly shedding probably for the rest of my life. But it sounds like
But it's work and
yeah, it's work.
it's better than going backwards.
But
That's the
yeah,
way we always wanna see
that's
it.
the only reason anyone would give like a woman lingerie to imagine them in that lingerie. So if there was a man that got that into a present and left it there, that disgusting guy was thinking of you
No,
in that
yeah.
lingerie. That's fucking damn.
And on top of that too, whether it was a woman or a man, the woman thought of me being involved with
Yeah, even
people
that's even worse. It's
sexually.
like you're well, because it's like a quinceañera. I get that to some extent. In Mexico, it's like full on. After your quinceañera, some guy comes and steals you away, quote unquote, steals you away. You can get married and you can just start living your life, and
Mhm.
that's a reality. It's hard. That's a
Yeah.
big part of the whole misogynistic culture in Mexico. And
Yes. So let me explain quinceañeras real quick.
okay,
Hopefully, for anyone questioning this, if they are listening this far into it, a quinceañera
it's
is
a lot
a
longer than we
rich,
expected to go.
yeah, it's a ritual in dominantly Hispanic, Latino communities from our culture, Mexican culture. It's seen as a ritual where you marry yourself to God or to not basically not have sex until you
Oh,
are married.
I didn't know that.
So that's the whole ritual. Like literally, like dads will spend thousands of dollars on a quinceañera just to get their daughter to promise in public that they're not gonna do those things. And
I mean,
and on top of that, they're and on top of that, it's like it's they rather have that than talk to them about the the sexual stuff by telling them the truth about men.
I'd be like at that age, I'd be the type of dad where it's like, you're not gonna get a quinceañera. You're probably gonna get a car if I have the fun, if I have the money.
Yeah.
But you are gonna start taking classes of some sort that are gonna teach you, or I'm gonna you and like me and your mother are gonna teach you about what sex actually really is and like what kind of conversations you should be having with people about it, what you're comfortable with, like
What age you're supposed to have those
which
conversations
exactly.
with, who.
Oh man, like that's so sad. I didn't, and it makes so much sense because I've always told myself like, why the fuck are these people gonna spend thousands of dollars on a fucking quinceañera? And I'm always like, nah. If it was me, I'd tell my daughter she has to choose a trip or a car or something like that. But no, it's like again, it's misogynistic mindsets that are like at the root of it. Because even if like the daughter didn't want to have a quinceañera, most guys that know the meaning would be like, no,
Yeah.
she's having a quinceañera.
Yeah, and amongst the women, it's especially like scary because they make it feel like, oh, it's your passage to becoming a woman,
Yeah.
that you're no longer a girl.
I can already hear people being like, but if it's a mom instilling these things, is it misogyny? Yes,
It is
it is.
because someone put it in her head to
Yeah,
continue that ritual.
exactly. It's like just because, yeah,
So yeah, and my mom wanted me to have a quinceañera, and I was kind of like objective to it, and I think I just wanted to make her happy, and I told her like, "We'll have it, but as long as I get to pick the color." She's like, "It can't be black." I'm like, "It's gonna be black," and it ended up being more like an accent color than the dominant color of the quinceañera. It
okay.
was more like black, white, and red for roses, and so with that whole thing, like I even asked my mom this back then. Like, I learned about this ritual at the quinceañera. Like, it's about promising your body to God. But am I promise? Do you expect me to like not have sex until I'm married? And her explanation was like, oh, you can be with one man, just stay with that one man. And like she basically said, don't be a whore, don't be a
Yeah.
slut,
Well,
and
was she
like
saying like, so if you're with one man, you just have to stay with that one man, or she's just basically saying, look, if you're gonna be with a guy, you're only gonna be with that guy, and then if you guys are done.
I feel like she didn't go into detail of that, but the way I
But
interpret it
she
was
was,
like,
yeah,
she's like, just be with one man sexually at that time. And so for me, it was just kind of like, okay, it's conflicting, you know? And like, obviously, I would never ask my dad that question because he would be like, I want nothing to do with this
yeah. He's
question.
like,
He would be like,
Stephanie, ¿qué
shut
te
the
por
hell
allá?
up.
Yeah,
Yeah, shut the hell up. Get out of my face. Um,
he's funny. Your dad.
I love my dad.
I like him. I love him too.
Like, he's such a sweetheart. To me at least. Well, he doesn't. Well, how he's a sweetheart is he's just quiet. Like our bonding time is him on his phone and me on my phone, and
Because
that's the fact that we're in the same room is nice.
I honestly think the bonding I see sometimes is like he'll like when we go visit and have dinner with your family, he'll find a way to like slightly make fun of you, like
Oh
not
yeah,
make fun of you, but like ¿qué estás haciendo? And then you'll find a way to kind of do the same thing back at him,
yeah.
and he looks at you like, I,
He's just like my child just roasted me.
yeah, you roast each other.
Yeah, so I love my dad for that. I love having that relationship with him. So, but I would avoid certain questions around him because I knew that, like, if he's from Sinaloa, Mazatlan, but he didn't grow up exactly like the machista you would imagine. Like, maybe you would see in regular Mexican families. But then again, most Mexican families are, I would say, considered dysfunctional. I would, in the way that you're using it, because every family has their own issues. But I feel like every family tries to fit in that role they were taught that they needed to be in. And so I feel like my dad tried to do that with us, but we were like, nah, 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 nah. Because he grew up, mom being single, probably like 10 kids in the household. Dad left
That's,
mom.
I mean, that's probably one of the reasons too. He grew up with a single mom.
Yeah,
You don't really develop too many misogynistic characteristics.
not always, but
Not always, yeah. I mean, but still, it's like Mexico, so
yeah.
it's hard to tell.
Yeah. And then he grew up with his grandpa, who was definitely about trying to support his family at that point because he's like, my daughter is a single woman with X amount of kids. And I'm taking care of those kids because now I'm seeing the perspective of my daughter being left. And me as a man, I could have just left my wife with all the kids, but I didn't.
Mhm.
And so I feel like that's seen as like as my dad, like he was just like, it's not enough to just be there as a man. You need to be present. You need to understand that your family is very much like their own characters. And so the way he grew up, also my dad, is that his sisters, when they started getting older and having babies or getting married, my aunts were very much about like men ain't shit. Like I don't want to fucking deal with them in Sinaloa, Mexico. And then if a woman's already like that in Sinaloa, Mexico, like you ain't gonna change her mind. And so he grew up with that perspective that like men are indispensable just because they're so shitty. And he's like, I need to be on my best behavior.
Well,
Cause
something you. Oh, sorry.
no, yeah. It's like my dad, he's just like the way he sees men now, or I feel like he sees them, he's just kind of like, I want to be manly, but they're just so dumb and stupid and like they make no sense. Like, I feel like he's tried to be masculine, like watching soccer, but he just,
I mean, I understand that struggle.
yeah,
I mean, I feel masculine in all sorts of things I do, but there's all sorts of things that I naturally do as well that where I don't see them as being effeminate necessarily. If they are seen that way, I don't really care. But what I do care about is how people react by seeing those things. So
yeah,
just because I ask certain questions or because I say that I don't really talk sports and I don't really watch sports because
yeah,
I don't really buy into it too much. Um, People react crazy. Like it's crazy to me how weird some men react, and that's where I'm just like, oh, that's misogynism too.
yeah,
Like just because I have a somewhat effeminate view on something, and it's weird that we would even talk like we would even say not being into sports is an effeminate thing, but like they react so negatively. Like I remember I had a conversation with a barber of mine, which I don't go to anymore.
thankfully.
Unfortunately, the conversation was like long, and I'm the type of person where I'll hear anyone out, even like a someone that you might completely disagree with. I'm the type of person where I'm very patient and I hear people out, give them my opinion. But if it's where we're not agreeing, we're not gonna find any middle ground, then I'll stop. But so that's what I was doing. He told me a long story about his brother being gay, cool, how accepting he is, and then he went on to go on a tirade, like a homophobic and transphobic tirade about why there was so much wrong with it. I'm like, oh, you started this out by telling me your brother was gay, and I relate. My brother is too. We're totally supportive and like just accepting of him. And you made it seem like you were going the same way, but you took a complete like left turn. And yeah, that's I couldn't go back. I don't know.
Yeah,
Might be a little petty, but no, I think it's just it just rubbed me the wrong way.
I just think you want to like encourage the good thoughts
Yeah.
that people have and
Well,
support that. And with him, you were like, I can't be around this guy who hasn't thought about what he's saying right
yeah,
now.
and that's the thing. That's I kind of saw it as misogyny too, because the points he was making were extremely misogynistic points. He wasn't even like clear on it, and also like how I was responding, which was in my opinion very rational, just like the normal thing a normal person would say, like just against the misogynistic like super toxic stuff he was saying. It made everyone else in that barbershop super uncomfortable. Every single guy in there was listening in, not saying anything, and the tension like you
Yeah,
could cut the tension with a knife. Like,
yeah,
and ever since then I was like, oh okay, so everyone in here is unwilling to look at like at their own,
yes,
like at least because of the conversation I just assumed that everyone in there was somewhat uncomfortable with sexuality in general. Whether they know that it's their sexuality or not is one thing, but it seemed like every guy in there just would be feeling uncomfortable talking about or being around a gay guy. It was just crazy to me.
yeah. And the thing that scares me about that perspective, obviously, it's like, what if they have kids who are gay? They're obviously not going to be very happy with that or that perspective. Like, that to me is just like scary because it's like that spiritual cleansing or that clenching that people like that have, like especially in Hispanic culture. It's like it's almost like they feel like if I'm accepting of gay people, I can accept myself as a gay person. And I think that's
Yeah,
just unrealistic because it's like if you know in your heart you're not gay, you just are who you are.
exactly.
That's fine. That
Why
should be the
it's
absolute norm.
it's the same thing with people being transphobic is
Yes.
they they assume that it's them in that situation even though they'll never say that, and because they absolutely cannot like handle the thought of that,
Hmm.
that's why they have all these crazy like thoughts and ideas. When you're just open about it and just open with yourself, you might find out that you wouldn't even be in that situation. You might not be like a trans person, but because you're not even willing to be open about it, you're living in fear of what it could
Hmm.
mean for you being a trans person. And you'll never know if you are or not. You'll just keep saying no, I'm not, when in reality you could be.
Yeah, and you'll be denying these people's like rights in existence. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, why are you doing that to them? Why are you thinking that that's correct? Like you haven't questioned that thought. And that scares me more because and that goes back to where we have been starting at. It's like give yourself the time and the ability to say like why am I thinking this way? Is it correct? Because at the end of the questioning, like you'll be either really changed or you were already on the right path. For me, like for example, as a little kid, like I questioned whether or not it was good to be gay because all my friends around me were, but I knew for a fact that they were great people. And regardless of being gay, it's just that they are just great as people as my friends. So I didn't choose them to be my friends because they were gay. They just happened to be. And so growing up, I didn't know that I didn't realize like my own form of homophobia towards myself that I needed to admit that I was also not straight. And once I allowed myself to be comfortable with the fact that like there has never been anything wrong with being gay. The fact that people believe it is the problem because I myself I imagined myself as a little kid just marrying a woman and just thinking I'm going to defend this person with my life because no one's going to get in the way of me being happy with this person. No one deserves to have anyone in the way of that. And even whether man or woman, if I ever thought that someone was going to be a threat to my relationship, to my partner, simply because of that, I always felt like this deep rage towards people who are homophobic because it's like you didn't question why you're homophobic. You didn't question why you're saying this about gay people. You just followed what someone else was saying and what else someone else was teaching you. And you have no original thought, do you?
Eh, I feel like a lot of that too stems from like we're not open to have conversations with people. We're not open to being around the people that we despise and like seeing them as actual human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I definitely want to try to do more. Like, hey, growing up, I had my own homophobic ways of seeing things. Like, I had
Yes.
my own things where I would like at a young age, I would call other guys gay all the time in a very nasty way. I'd call my own brother gay, and lo and behold, he actually was. At one point, he told me that he believes that the reason he's gay was because I used to call him gay as a little kid, right? That hurt me for a long time, and then one day I told him, "You remember you said that?" He's like, "No, I don't remember. I told you that." And I'm like, oh, "Okay." He's like, "I don't believe that. By the way, I knew I was gay since I was a little kid. I think I just said that because I was still upset about it."
Yeah.
I was like, "I understand. I hurt you. Cool. Like at least now I know. I could have done better." But what I'm just saying is, me from a very very early age, I was already having those homophobic thoughts, and that led me to go through a whole journey of self-deprecation because I was never attracted to men, but I felt like I could be attracted to most people, like especially if it was someone that I could just really hang out with. So it made me feel weird because I had sometimes I would grow like a small attraction to like a male friend.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like a sexual thing because that's not what
Yeah.
we were experiencing at the time. Obviously, we were young kids, but like because of that, it made me feel really weird about myself, and it made me like question myself and like put myself in this mode of like telling myself I wasn't, like I was kind of like a bad person for a long time. And yeah, it's just like I'm glad that I've shed that away, and probably my brother coming out of the closet was like a huge thing that helped me too, to see like, hey, it's just, if you are, it's okay, but if you're not, it's okay too. Like you don't
Yeah.
have to be, and it's like it doesn't mean that you're gonna be. It's just, and even if you are, it doesn't matter. Like once I came
Yeah.
to the realization of it's not a big deal, that's when I was like, well, no, I'm straight. Like I'm a person where I'm super comfortable being effeminate. I'm super comfortable being a little more less masculine, and like being like the silly girly one in my men group. Like I don't give a fuck, really. That doesn't make me in any way gay or anything like that. So I don't know. I don't know what I'm getting at necessarily anymore.
I think you're just like coming to terms, like you had to come terms into terms with that to kind
Yeah.
of like fully accept like it's not a big deal. Because for me, it's like the way you're describing, like maybe that attraction you felt to a friend. I feel like we develop crushes in people based on what they can do for us spiritually,
Oh,
regardless of gender
I
and
love it.
emotional
Yeah,
support.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Cause like for me it's like I used to think I would have crushes on older people and I'm like no, they're my teachers. Like I can't, but I wouldn't think of them in scenarios where I was kissing them or touching them. I
Yeah,
just thought of scenarios where we were both just hanging out and talking,
yeah,
hanging out being platonic. So I had to learn that there's different ways of having relationships with people and having the full unconditional love for them, but not be romantic,
yeah,
and that's
yeah. And that's something I see like in a lot of like my own toxic like way of seeing things. Like in the past, I'd feel weird about saying like I love you to my friends and even my family, and specifically like my guy friends. Like I'd feel, but I don't know. As I grew older, it just like made me realize like life's too short to not tell people
yeah.
like that you love them, especially if they mean a huge deal to you. And there's nothing bad about being vulnerable. There's nothing bad about being open.
Mm.
It does come with drawbacks, that being vulnerable, being open, it gives people ammunition sometimes,
Yeah.
and that's okay because as long as you're confident in what you're saying and what your beliefs are, like you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Like it's like some comedians, instead of letting people say, "Oh, you're this way, you're that way," they get ahead of it, and that's kind of how I see being vulnerable. Like if I tell someone, like, so for example, I'll say it right now. Something I'm not comfortable talking about on the air that you're aware of. Something that I'm still working on and constantly trying to get rid of. I'm someone that suffers from being a porn addict. I have been for a long time since I was probably a kid. And, it's taken me a long time to be able to open up and talk about that. Now, if I was to open up to someone about that, they could use it against me. But I feel like opening up kind of gets ahead of them. And if people use it against me, I'm like, I'm open about it. I don't really give a fuck whether you say it against me or not. It hurts me when people I love and are close to me do it. But one thing I wanted to circle back, because we were talking about being open to friends and their reactions and stuff like that. One thing I do notice is having those types of conversations, being that open, it can make people act weird around you.
Yes.
And it can make people not know how to approach you, not know how to, go about talking to you. And I feel like I alienate people in that way. But I feel like when people are open enough to have those conversations, um, they'll be back in my life, even if I alienate them for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess with all growth and all like evolving, like be easy on yourself. And for the people that are your loved ones, maybe don't don't put it all off on them just yet, because our friends and family members also need their time to understand how to help us with our growing and evolving. So be patient with your friends, be patient with your family, with yourself, and just don't give up.
Yeah. Have that. Believe in your abilities. And going back to what you were saying, life is short. The way I see it is like, regardless if I die tomorrow or in 20 years, like, I can always make the change now.
Yeah, it's
And
never too late.
it's never too late. And the thing is, like, if we always believe life is short, I feel like that makes people wait until the last minute. But think about this. Let's say life isn't short for us. Let's say we have 50, 60 more years ahead of us, like,
Which we could.
which we
Yeah.
could, or like, you know, like think about your relationships, your marriages, your friendships, your relationships with your parents. Like, think about, like, in the next 30 or 40 years, are you okay staying the same up until those 40 years come to an end?
That's yeah. I couldn't have put it better,
Because,
honestly.
like, regardless of dying the next day or in 30 years, in the long term, the idea is you still have that time to find more about yourself and be capable of doing more with what you've got.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's like, when we were younger, we used to think we were going to die in our 20s. We're getting nearing our 30s. You're already 30. And we
I'm not
probably
upset about it, by the way.
no. It's like, regardless, we're closer to 50, but what have we done in those 20, half of the 20, 50 years or
Yeah,
30 years,
mhm.
like, to make those 50 years worth it? To make those 50 years feel like we did enough for ourselves to make ourselves feel happy, because our parents probably didn't have that option when they were working hard and raising us.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, as bad as things might be in terms of buying a house and being independent individuals in this society as we know it now, you know, we're privileged in that way that we can focus on our growth and evolution in this way, while our parents mindset, at least us from being parents of immigrants, it's like they're here to work hard and make sure their kids are set up to at least go to school and have a better life than they did. So it comes with a lot of, like we said earlier, a lot of expectations. I'm lucky my parents didn't set them so hard, which helped me be creative, didn't help me be productive. Still working on it. But yeah, no, I think we have a lot more privilege than we understand because of that.
Yeah. And What's good now is that our parents also have that opportunity now.
That's true.
Now that they've kind of like maybe like chilled out a little bit, maybe at home with the social security or
Yeah.
whatever. But
And to that point too, one thing I'm want to acknowledge, and like I'm very, I think we have to be real. Think our parents, the older generations, they can grow and evolve. We got to be patient too, though, because things are like, I feel like we're capable of evolving at a quicker rate. And just because or individuals are able to evolve at a quicker rate, and it depends what you're going through and what kind of experiences you're going through at the moment. So everyone's experience is differently, but I've known people that evolve very quickly, but when their family group doesn't, they clash a
hmm
lot. And I would just say try not to do that the most you can, because certain people take longer. You can't force people to grow, but if they are open to it, just nurture it and don't be hostile about it. Like, we're
yeah,
never going to get anywhere trying to force people to think differently.
yeah, and just giving people the tools and the ability and making them understand their own power and
Mm.
being able to think different. I feel that that's more important because it's like, sir, you are capable of better. And if you don't want to be, that's understandable, but don't let that get in the way of someone else's growth. Don't affect other people.
Yeah,
Like, if you want to be miserable on your own.
because some people will see growth and they don't want it. In amongst them, like, they don't want it for themselves, and they don't want it in their group
Yeah.
either, and they get very, very defensive about it.
Oh, yeah.
Um, I love having
Anyway,
conversations with you. We're gonna have a
yes.
lot more. One thing I do want to mention at the end of the show here, I want to say it to bring it to fruition, and something we've talked about, which hopefully we'll be releasing a few vlogs going forward. But here in our community, we live in a place where it's not a city, it's not incorporated as a city to the county. So we're kind of just part of the county. That means there's no sidewalks, there's no businesses, there's gas lines and like some sewage, we're very remote. Um, so to that extent, there's not really a huge community atmosphere, and that's something I always try to cultivate when it comes to doing creative things and just anything really. And with this creative outlet that we're kind of being open, like this way of opening up and kind of releasing some stuff, I want to give us a goal. And the goal is to be more healthy this coming year, the year that we're in now, more active, eat better. I feel like that's all part of what we're talking about too, growing and evolving. It kind of goes with each other.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned it to you, and I want to start a community walking group. So hopefully by the next episode, I'll have an update on that. And I just want to say it out there to bring it to fruition, bring it to a point of reality. And yeah, hopefully by next week or the week after that, we have a few people taking a few walks on the daily. And if we can cultivate some people if we can find people that would not have exercised and would not have walked without us knocking at their door and asking them if they want to go for a walk with us, maybe twice or three times a week, then that's a win for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I want to do. I want to help someone that is not very active find out that it's super easy to be active. And not just that, you have a community of people that are willing to do it for you and kind of hold you accountable. Um, yeah, that's kind of a rant, but I just wanted to say it on the podcast.
Yeah, and we're doing exercise too.
Yeah,
We're doing that as a means of building, getting those few endorphins in that you can get. Not
yeah,
really trying to be skinny or
yeah.
have that goal, but just
Look, this isn't gonna
feeling
get
good.
like, we're not gonna get this to skinny. Would I like to have abs one day? Sure. Do I feel like that's a bad thing to look forward to?
Kinda.
It's not the healthiest thing to look forward to, right? So, like, although I could see myself with them, I'm not like necessarily wanting to work towards that, but I am wanting to be more just healthy, not just physically but mentally.
Mm-hmm.
And I have noticed that going on a walk in the mornings for 2 or 3 miles every day has helped me so much to just be, sometimes I mean, I'm in a bad mood, but just in general it gets me being way more productive. And just for people with ADHD, if you're neurodivergent, please get those endorphins going.
They help a lot.
And if I don't mention the walking again, please hold me accountable. Be like, Luis, you messed up.
Okay.
We'll catch you guys on the next one.
Thank you so much for lasting this long and have a wonderful day. And you deserve good things to come towards you. You also need to put out good things for yourself and
That's
for
right.
others.
All right. Stay tuned.
Bye.